Clyde Drexler said LeBron James is no longer a top 5 player of all time. And before you scroll away thinking this is just another hot take from someone looking for attention, stop right there. Because this is not that kind of story. This is not some random media personality throwing out a wild opinion to get clicks. This is not a bitter role player who never reached the highest level trying to tear down someone bigger than himself. This is Clyde Drexler, a Hall of Famer, a man with 12 All-Star selections, a championship ring, an Olympic gold medal, and one of the most complete basketball careers this league has ever seen. And he sat down in early 2025, calm, composed, and completely sure of himself, and said those exact words out loud. LeBron James is not in my top 5 anymore. And the moment that clip started moving, the entire basketball world stopped what it was doing. Think about what it actually takes for a statement like that to hit as hard as it did. The NBA has no shortage of opinions. Every single day, someone, somewhere, is saying something bold about LeBron James. Some of it is fair criticism, some of it is just noise. People have been debating where LeBron ranks among the all-time greats for 20 years now. It is one of the longest-running conversations in all of sports. So for something to cut through all that noise, for something to make people actually stop scrolling and pay attention, it has to come from the right person at the right moment with the right energy. And that is exactly what happened here. Drexler did not yell. He did not perform. He was not trying to go viral. He was simply speaking what he believed to be true. And somehow, that quiet confidence made the whole thing land 10 times harder than any loud debate show moment ever could. Now let us set the scene properly, because context matters a great deal here. In early 2025, Clyde Drexler was speaking in what people described as a semi-private setting, the kind of conversation where former players and legends feel comfortable enough to say what they actually think, rather than what they are supposed to say for the cameras. These are the moments where real opinions come out. No filters, no PR thinking, no worrying about which media deals might be affected by the words coming out of your mouth. Just honest thoughts from someone who has been watching basketball for decades and has formed a clear opinion about what he sees. And when the conversation turned to all-time rankings, when someone asked him directly where LeBron falls on that list, Drexler did not pause. He did not soften his answer. He said it simply and directly. LeBron is not in my top 5 anymore. And he added something that made it even more powerful. He said, if you are being honest with yourself, a lot of people feel the same way. That last part is the piece that really got under people's skin, because he was not just sharing.
He was suggesting that his opinion is shared more widely than people are willing to admit publicly. He was saying there is a whole group of people, probably including some you respect, who quietly agree but have not said it out loud yet. And when a legend with his kind of credibility makes that kind of suggestion, it forces you to think about it differently. It is no longer just one man's take. It becomes a question about the broader conversation around LeBron's legacy and whether the mainstream narrative has been telling the complete truth. Let us take a moment here to really appreciate who Clyde Drexler is and why his voice carries the weight that it does. Because this debate only means something if the person saying it has the standing to say it. And Drexler absolutely has that standing. He was not just a good player. He was one of the most complete players the NBA has ever produced. He could score from anywhere on the floor. He was an elite defender who could guard multiple positions. He was a creative playmaker who made everyone around him better. He was the kind of player coaches dream about having because he never needed plays drawn up for him. He understood the game at the highest level, and he performed at that level consistently for over a decade. 12 All-Star games, a championship in Houston, an Olympic gold medal as part of the Dream Team, the Hall of Fame. When people talk about the greatest shooting guards of all time, Drexler's name is always in that conversation, and rightfully so. He earned everything he has to say about this game. And here's something that makes this even more significant. This was not Drexler's first time pushing back on the LeBron narrative. He has been quietly skeptical for years, not loud about it, not making it his entire personality, but in conversations going back several years, he has consistently held the view that the way we talk about LeBron has been driven more by the media cycle than by actual basketball performance and context. In a 2024 conversation, he said something that stuck with people who were paying attention. He said, "The way we talk about players today is more about story than substance. People want a hero for their generation, and they will move the goalposts to give them one." He was not naming LeBron directly in that moment, but everyone who heard it knew exactly who he was talking about. So when the 2025 comment dropped, it was not a sudden shift. It was the natural conclusion of years of quiet, thoughtful observation from a man who has been paying close attention and forming a very specific opinion. That history matters because it tells you this was not clout chasing. This was not a legend deciding one morning to say something controversial to get back into the conversation. This was a man who has been thinking about this for a long time, watching carefully, and finally deciding the moment had come to say it plainly. That kind of conviction is very different from a hot take. Hot takes are loud and impulsive. What Drexler did was the opposite of that. It was calm, considered, and built on a foundation of years of real thought. And that is exactly why it spread the way it did. Now here's where things get really interesting, because the surface-level coverage of this story keeps missing the most important.
His comment was not purely about numbers. If you listen carefully to the full context of what he shared, he was not sitting there with a calculator running box scores in his head. He was talking about something that statistics have never been able to fully capture: the weight a player carries when the game is truly on the line, the decisions made in the fourth quarter of an elimination game, the moments where greatness either shows up completely or it does not. And those moments, according to Drexler, are where he starts to have real questions about LeBron's place at the very top of the all-time conversation. He said something in the extended version of that conversation that has not been widely highlighted, but deserves a lot of attention. He said it is not about the numbers anymore. Numbers can be managed. What he looks at is what a player does when everything is on the line and there is no way to manage the moment. That is where he starts to have questions. Now, he did not put LeBron's name on that sentence directly, but the entire conversation was about LeBron, and every single person in that room understood exactly what was being said. And that subtle way of delivering the point is actually more powerful than a direct attack would have been, because it does not just criticize, it plants a seed. It makes you go back through your own memory and replay certain moments. It makes you ask yourself the same hard question he was asking. And once you start asking that question honestly, you realize it is not as easy to answer as you thought. This is the part that makes LeBron fans genuinely uncomfortable, and it is important to acknowledge why. There are moments in LeBron's career that his supporters have spent years explaining and defending. The 2011 Finals against Dallas, where LeBron disappeared in ways that nobody who watched it has ever fully forgotten. The way certain fourth quarters have gone in pressure situations that did not match the level of play shown in the earlier parts of those same games. These are not invented criticisms. They are real moments that real basketball people have been quietly discussing for years. Drexler was not bringing up anything new. He was simply saying that he personally weighs those moments heavily when making his all-time judgment. And a lot of people who have watched this game for a long time feel the same way, even if they are not saying it publicly. Let us be completely honest about what LeBron James has achieved, because this script is not here to tear down a great player unfairly. The resume is genuinely historic. 4 championships across 3 different franchises, 4 Finals MVP awards, 4 regular season MVPs.
They do not want the social media following to factor in. They want to talk about what happened on the floor when the game was on the line. And on that specific question, they have doubts that have never fully gone away. What makes this moment feel different from all the previous debates is the timing of it and the broader movement it seems to be connected to. Because in 2025, something has shifted in the way the old guard of the NBA talks about this generation and about LeBron specifically. For years, former players were careful, they were polished, they gave the diplomatic answers about how every era is different and how you respect what the modern players have achieved. But that careful, polished approach has been slowly giving way to something more direct, more honest, more willing to challenge the narrative that has been built up around LeBron over the last decade. And Drexler's comment landed right in the middle of that shift. He was not speaking alone. He was giving voice to something that multiple legends from past eras have been feeling but holding back. The frustration that their era has been talked about as smaller or slower or less skilled in order to make the argument for current players look stronger. The feeling that history is being rewritten in real time to fit a story that has already been decided. And the quiet resentment that comes when you spent your entire career pouring everything you had into this game, only to have it described as lesser by people who never played a single minute of it. That frustration is real. It has been building for years, and Drexler gave it a clear public voice in 2025. The reaction that followed the clip was exactly what you would expect, and then some. The first wave was pure defense from the LeBron side of the conversation. The stat comparisons came flooding in immediately. The championship breakdowns, the arguments about how you could possibly remove the all-time scoring leader from the top 5. The social media was loud and it was passionate, and it made some points that genuinely deserved to be acknowledged. LeBron's supporters are not wrong to defend his accomplishments. Those accomplishments are real. But then something happened that nobody was quite ready for. Other voices started showing up. Not loud voices, not aggressive voices, just present ones. Former players, people whose names you would know immediately, began quietly engaging with the posts supporting Drexler's position. A like here, a share there, a short comment with no essay attached, just a quiet agreement that said, in the simplest possible way, he is not wrong. And that quiet agreement was louder than all the noise put together. Because those players did not have to say anything, they chose to. And when people who played at the highest level, who have no reason to be petty or jealous, who are not looking for attention, quietly side with a criticism of LeBron James, it means something. It means the feeling Drexler was describing is genuinely shared in those circles in a way that does not always make it to public conversation. Meanwhile, LeBron's camp went completely silent. No statement, no response on social media, no friendly media voice sent out to smooth things over or offer a counter-narrative, just silence. And anyone who has followed the NBA long enough knows that silence from that camp is never accidental. Every move, every response, every piece of public messaging from LeBron's world is calculated and deliberate. So the silence here was a choice. And that choice tells you something. Either the criticism hit somewhere real and the decision was made not to feed it with a response, or the calculation was that engaging with it would only make the story bigger and give it more oxygen. Either way, both of those interpretations are uncomfortable for LeBron's legacy, because neither one of them says the criticism was easy to dismiss. One analyst covering the league closely said in 2025 that what you are seeing from the old guard is a generation of players who built the foundation of this league finally feeling like they have permission to push back. Drexler opened the door, and once a door like that opens, it does not close easily. Other voices feel emboldened to follow. Other opinions that have been kept quiet start finding their way out. And before long, the conversation that was moving in one direction starts to feel genuinely open again. That is exactly what happened here. Drexler did not just share an opinion, he shifted the energy of the entire debate. Now, let us talk about what this all means for the bigger picture, because
It is about who we choose to represent the absolute peak of what a human being can achieve in athletic competition. And for a long time, the momentum in that conversation was firmly on LeBron's side.
Not because everyone agreed. There has never been full agreement on anything related to LeBron James, but because the energy of the debate was moving in his direction. The narrative was being written in a way that pointed toward him being at the very top or just below it. But something changed in 2025. The momentum shifted, not dramatically, not overnight, but unmistakably. More voices from the old guard started speaking freely. More people who played the game at the highest level started saying versions of what Drexler said, not always publicly, not always with this level of directness, but the feeling was spreading. And in a debate that runs on perception as much as on fact, momentum matters an enormous amount. When the energy shifts, when more voices start moving in a new direction, the narrative follows. And right now, the narrative around LeBron James is more genuinely contested than it has been at any point in the last 5 to 10 years. Drexler said something toward the end of that conversation that has stayed with everyone who heard it. He said he is not trying to take anything from LeBron. He just wants to be honest about what he sees when he watches the film and asks himself the hardest questions about greatness. And his honest answer is that LeBron is not in his 5. The hardest questions. That phrase is worth sitting with for a moment, because those questions are not about numbers. They're not about how many points you scored or how many seasons you played. They're about what kind of player you are when the pressure is absolute and there is nothing left to manage or control. They're about the moments that define legacies, the moments that separate the truly great from the historically great. And those are exactly the questions that some of the most serious basketball minds have been quietly wrestling with when it comes to LeBron for a very long time. Here's the truly important thing to hold on to as this debate continues to grow. LeBron James will absolutely go down as one of the greatest basketball players in the history of this sport. Nobody serious is disputing that. He has done things on a basketball court over a 20-year career that most players could not do in their wildest dreams. His athleticism, his intelligence, his longevity, and his ability to perform at an elite level across multiple decades are all genuinely remarkable. The conversation about his greatness is real, and it is well-deserved, but the question of whether he is top 5 all-time, whether he belongs in the same breath as the true legends who shaped this game at its highest level, that question is no longer being answered with the same confidence it was just a few years ago. And Clyde Drexler, with one calm and deliberate statement in early 2025, made that uncertainty a whole lot louder. The fact that this moment has not yet exploded across every major mainstream media outlet actually makes it more powerful rather than less, because the conversations that happen outside of the noise, the ones that move through real basketball people and real fans who care about the actual game, those are the conversations that shape how history gets remembered. They are slower, but they go deeper, they stick longer, and this one is already sticking. LeBron's legacy is not finished. His playing days have not fully ended. There may still be moments to come that add to the story. But right now, in 2025, for the first time in a very long time, that legacy is genuinely vulnerable to a different kind of historical judgment than the one his supporters have always assumed was coming. The old guard is finding its voice, the conversation is opening back up, and Clyde Drexler just became the person who kicked the door open for all of it. So now the question comes back to you, the person watching this right now and thinking through everything that has been laid out here. Where do you stand? Is Drexler right? Has LeBron James genuinely fallen out of the all-time top 5? Is this a fair reassessment from a man who played the game at the highest level and simply holds a different standard for what belongs at the very top? Or is this a legend from a different era who cannot fully accept that the game moved forward and produced someone who transcends what came before? Drop your personal top 5 in the comments right now. Tell me where you put LeBron and who you have ahead of him if you agree with Drexler. This is one of the biggest conversations in basketball right now, and it is only going to get louder from here. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe